struggle in the power structure, and I hate it. I'll be honest, I hate it. This is not something that I would have chosen for myself. I am obedient first and foremost. So I do what God told me to do. Because if it was up to Tricia, I wouldn't be sitting there. But I'm there because God said so. And because God says so and I'm obedient, and I don't want to get to heaven and him tell me, now why didn't you do what I told you to do? I got to do what he said do. But I also realize that the reason why I'm there is because I have an assignment. There are things that are supposed to happen because I'm there, and there are things that didn't happen because I was there. So our motivation for why we do things as Christians is because of our faith. What motivates us is service and calling. I'm a servant first, and I go where God told me to go. And those are the things that motivate us in our faith. So I'm gonna give you 5 points, and I'm gonna challenge you a little bit to think about how these apply to yourself, and then we'll have a conversation about it. So the first point is, if you are called to go into business or into politics or anything in life, first things first, you must be called to serve him in this way. And if it's from God, it's an urge and it's urgent. So I'm going to refer to 2 people from the Bible because I feel like they are the prototypes for this. One is Joseph. So if you think about who's a prototype for business in the Bible, is Joseph. Joseph made Egypt the place to be when everything else all around was falling apart. Joseph prepared Egypt for what was coming because God anointed him in that way. Joseph was able to manage Potiphar's house. He was able to do all of these things because God put that on him. And then in politics, if you look at who might be the example in politics from the Bible, I would say it's David. David rose to become king. God anointed him, but he had to endure a lot and go through a lot to be in that position. So if you look at Joseph, God gave him dreams and visions of what was to come way before it happened in ways that he didn't even understand. And if you look at David, God called David. He sent the prophet to anoint one of Jesse's sons, and they weren't even thinking about David. David was out with the sheep. They literally had to call him. So the first thing is, you have a call. I'm going to share with you how God called me in both of these situations. I was working I had a business. I started a black newspaper in Danville. It was called Progressive Black News. And I had relocated back to Danville. I'm a Danville native, but I lived away for 20 years, and I never, ever, ever thought I would go back home. But God knew what he wanted me to do. So I moved back home. I started a black newspaper. The Lord had blessed me because when I moved back home, I was in the process of transitioning to move back home, and my corporate job out of Chicago had a reorganization. I thought I was going to go home, come back to Central Illinois with Chicago money because I was working from home. It was going to be the best thing ever, but that's not what God said do. So I came home, and I came home anyway, despite that. But they gave me a nice severance package, so I made more money that first year not working than I made the last year I had actually been in the job. So I started a newspaper, did that for several years, and then eventually went to corporate, and I was doing both. I was in corporate and working a newspaper. And I had a opportunity to go to Nigeria, and I spoke over there at a conference, and when I came home, I was completely uncomfortable in my own skin. And one day at work, I had to leave in the middle of the day. I felt like I was about to have a nervous breakdown. I just couldn't take it anymore. And I left. I was like, I gotta get out of here. And I'm not an emotional person, but I found myself near tears just sitting at my desk. So I left and I went home and I grabbed my journal And I went in the park and I prayed and I cried and I asked, Lord, what is it that you want me to do? And the Lord told me, you've been the person always talking to people about business for years. You've been the person that people have come to ask you to help them in their business for years. That's the thing you should be doing. And so then I said, okay, Lord, I see that, but I got to figure this out. And so some things transpired. I asked the Lord, I said, well, I don't have time to write a curriculum. Go find one. And I found one, and I knew, this is how I knew it was God. They have a training twice a year. They were about to have a training the next month. I called those people. I talked to them. The registration period had already closed for the hotel rooms and everything. They were like, we'll put you in our employee block. Go ahead and come. And I bought a ticket, registered, and I was in training for this entrepreneurship program the next month. That's how I started this path into going into this business. Now I'm gonna tell you about the path to the politics, because Lord knows I was resistant. I felt like Jonah, like I'm gonna end up in the belly of a whale because there's no way I'm doing that. But the Lord said, no, you're gonna do this. So I had considered being in politics because people kept asking me to run. And I said, I don't want to do that. That's not me. That's not who I am. I don't like the way that it's real adversarial. I don't like how people argue. I left corporate to be able to be uplifting and positive all the time, and that's not what happens in politics. But I had a dream. Just like Joseph, I had a dream, literally. I was in bed one night, and I woke up, and it was as if this had already happened. And I don't remember the details of the dream, but what I do, because this is now 6 years ago, but what I do recall is that I woke up with such an urge. I said, I have to call the clerk's office right now because I know that this is God telling me that I need to do this. So I called the clerk, or not the clerk, the election commission. And the election commission, I asked, when do the packets become available? Because I know I need to go get a packet so I can get my petitions. And the packets had become available the day before. It hadn't even made the paper. It didn't make the paper for 2 weeks. It hadn't been announced. But the Lord told me, go do this. So I did. I went and got the packet, and I set it on my dining room table, and it sat there for a month. I was like, okay, God, I got this packet, but I still don't know about this. And then the day that it was announced that Joe Biden had beaten Trump in the prior election, that was the day I went and walked my neighborhood and got my petition signed. It was the last day that I could do that, the last weekend before that petition was due. Everything else after that is because God said it. And there have been times that I have been in city councils, and if you've gone to city council meetings, and I've been like, if you listen, I don't even like this. I have said that out loud. I don't even like this. I don't even want to be here. But what y'all are doing is wrong. And I know it's because the Lord called me to be in that room for that reason, to be the person who takes care of the people, who's not about the power. It was an urge. I knew that I was going to be in trouble with God if I didn't go get that packet. I was scared to get to heaven and God say to me, you didn't do what I told you to do. So my first question for you all is, what is the thing that God has put on your heart to do that you've been ignoring? That you have been urged to do, because that urge is urgent. One of the things I tell entrepreneurs when I teach them in class, if God give you something, it's for you to do. Don't get mad if somebody else starts to do the idea that you had for years, because God sends his word to perform it. So if you don't do it, he's going to take that idea to somebody else down the street. So my first question for you is to think about it and answer for yourself. What is the thing that God has put on your heart to do? It is heavy. And because if it's an urge, it is urgent. You're supposed to start moving. God shows up when we start moving, when we start taking steps. It doesn't mean that you got to do everything, because the walk is one step at a time. So you just got to take one step, but you got to show up, because God responds to our faith. When we take a faith step, that's when God shows up. He's waiting on us so that he can open the windows and doors of blessings for us. So that's the first question. I got to see what else I got on my notes. Okay. My second point is that you must say yes to the call, even though he will not show you what's coming or all the obstacles you will face. Because if he did, you wouldn't do it. And on top of that, you will also feel inadequate, because you are. Because God does not call the qualified, he qualifies the called. That's why we need faith, and that's why we need grace. If you go look in the Bible and you look at the fact that God doesn't show you what's coming, God gave Joseph a dream of his brothers coming and to him, and how he was sitting high above them. He did not show him that he was going to be betrayed by his brothers, that he was going to be sold into slavery, that he was going to be accused of something that he didn't do and then in prison for it, that he was going to sit in prison for a long time. God didn't show him any of that. Joseph eventually became the second in command in Egypt, but there was all of these trials before that. Same thing with David. Now, David was called, and we know that David was anointed by Samuel, but David wasn't shown that, oh, well, when you go to the palace first, Saul's going to try to kill you. And then you're going to have to run for your life and be in exile. And then after that, after you become king, your reign is still going to be full of warfare the entire time, partially because, you sinned. Because God told him that was the punishment for him sleeping with Uriah's wife, Bathsheba. Your reign is going to be constant warfare. And God didn't show him that he was going to lose a baby, and that his son was going to rape his daughter, and that another one of his sons was then going to hunt him down in the same way Saul did, and he was going to be exiled again. God didn't show him all of that. Not at the time that he got anointed to be king. And if he had shown him, the answer would be no. There's a whole lot of things that have happened for me in both business and politics that God didn't show me. And if he had, I'd have been like, for real, God, I don't know if I can do this. But the truth of the matter is, I can't. Not in my own strength. That's why we need grace. That's why we need faith. Because every time times get tough for me, especially in business, I'm like, okay, God, I know you told me to do this, but I know you send your word to perform it. Now, God, I done told everybody that I'm here doing this because this is what you said do. And God, you're not a liar. So I know that you're going to bless me because you send your word to perform it. I speak the word to God, back to God, about what God's going to do, because that's what faith is. And I have to stand in my faith every single day. Me standing up here on this stage right now, what I was thinking about before I got here was making sure I had enough money to make payroll next week, because now it's not just me. I got 5 employees. And we're waiting on cash flow, right? God didn't show me that when I left my corporate job 6 years ago. And when it was just me stressing about me, I wasn't worried about it. Now I got 5 other households to worry about. God didn't show me any of that, but still, I hold on to the Lord. God did not show Joseph, and God did not show David. And God didn't show me all the times when I said yes to politics, that other people on the council were going to be talking about me out in the Danville streets. How people would call me and go, yeah, I just had a conversation with so-and-so, and it was supposed to be about such and such, but he started talking about you. And I'm like, I didn't do anything to that man. Why is he talking about me? Why is he slinging mud in my name? All I'm trying to do is make sure that I represent the people and make sure that we do right by the people. Why am I the person who arrows are being pointed at? God doesn't show us that. So we have to say, yeah, we have to say yes, even though we don't see everything that's coming. And the truth of the matter is, the Bible says we will have obstacles and that there will be afflictions. Psalms 34:19, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers out of them all. So every single time something happens, I say, okay, Lord, I know we don't have money today, but I know you're going to deliver out of us. Deliver. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I know you're going to show up. And I've never missed a payroll. It's been 6 years. I've never missed a payroll. So God going to show up. I just don't know how at the moment. But I know he's going to show up. Matthew 16:33, in the world you will have tribulations, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. The Bible tells us this is what's going to happen. And as Christians, we know it's what's going to happen. Because there have been times that I've looked around and said, okay, wait a minute, I'm going through something. My sister is going through something. My mama is going through something. Okay, it's something up. It must be a blessing coming way down there. I know it's coming because this don't just happen. When we say yes, we have to make sure that we say emphatically yes. Definitely not no, and not a yes but a yes and. Years ago, I took a improv class, and in that improv class, the structure of improv is yes and. And so how it works is, because improv is unscripted, just people on stage just doing stuff. And it's always hilarious. And the reason why it works is because when you're on stage with somebody and they start to do something, you're saying in your head, yes, and. You accept whatever it is that they do, and you take it and you run with it and you take it a step further. And that's what happens when we say yes to God. God will take, I'm very visual and I like to use analogies. So to me, it's almost like the call that he gives us is a glass ball. Now he could take, if we said no to that and he tossed that glass ball at us, when it come to us and we say no, we standing here with our hands like this, we don't catch it, it's gonna crash. It's gonna crash and shatter. If we say yes, but God throws it to us and we try to catch it, but we're hesitant about it, we could still drop it. But when you say yes and, you take it and you know that I'm ready for it, I'm prepared for it, I'm going to take it, I'm going to protect it, and I'm going to move with it. And so when we say yes and to God, we are able to then take whatever God said do and say, okay, this is what we doing, God? I'm ready. Whatever it is, I'm ready. There have been times when in my business, God has shown me things and I'm like, I don't know how we're going to do this, but I know this is what we're doing. And I'm going to walk in faith and God will show up. I own a co-working space in Danville. We weren't supposed to be there. It wasn't in the plan. It was an urge that I had. So when our landlord, I used to rent offices. I had 3 little offices. And my landlord came to me and said, I want to renew your lease. And I said, no, I don't want to renew the lease. Not unless you have. This is me talking out the side of my neck. I'm just talking stuff. Not unless you have a space that I can have a classroom and an office and some meeting rooms. She's like, I might have something. And I was like, for real? Okay. So I walked in the space, and I walked in, and I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, we can have class back here. This room and this room can be a meeting room. And we could have our desk right here. And I could see this. Okay, this could work. The next day, we were running a grant at the time that we were providing free education to entrepreneurs sponsored by the state. The next day, the state sent an email and said, could you use some more money? And you know what I said? Okay, God, I see what you did. Because people say, oh, Tricia, you're so smart. Tricia, you did this. No, y'all might think I'm smart, but I am not that smart. I am blessed. That was God. That's not me. That's God. He put me in positions. All I did was say yes. Because every time I say yes, God shows up. I don't know what the blessing is. I don't know how far back it is, but I know my God. And God will show up. So my next question for you is, what do you need to say yes to, even though you don't see the stair steps? What is it that God has put in front of you that you know you need to be doing? Because you already got the call. It's urgent. You have an urge, and I'm telling you right now, that urge is urgent. What do you need to say yes? What is it that you need to say yes to? And how can you turn that hesitance into a yes and? Because it is time for you to move in the direction that God told you to go. Point number 3. Oh, actually, let me actually support that point by going back to David and Joseph. David felt inadequate because I talked about the yes, but I didn't expound on the inadequacy. When David went to face Goliath, they told him, "You're just a boy. You can't do this." And then they tried to give him armor. And David was like, I can't do anything with this. That's where the inadequacy showed up. David had to rely on what God had already shown him. I'm about to call an audible because it's not even in my notes. God showed him a way of doing things that worked for him that don't work for everybody else. God will show you ways of doing things that work for you that don't work for everybody else. Because he has a pattern. He proves himself. He has a pattern in all of our lives. And actually, this just occurred to me this morning as I was eating before I came here. One of the patterns that God has in my life is that I make money on things that I don't even own. I've done this multiple times. It's happening right now, and it occurred to me this morning, like, Tricia, remember, this is God's pattern, one of God's patterns in your life. So we have a co-working space. Our co-working space has expanded twice. We're about to expand again. We keep opening walls to adjacent spaces. It's a blessing from God. And so I remember I'm worried about payroll. This was probably about 4 or 5 months ago, and I was at church, and I went up for prayer. My pastor said, God told me to tell you to make a move, and I knew exactly what he was talking about. He was talking about expanding, because I was like, I don't want to expand because I want to, and I don't want to expand out of hubris or ego. So I'm not sure if this is the move that we should make, because I don't want this to be about me. But then pastor said move, and he didn't know what he was talking about, but I knew what he was talking about, because I had been talking to the landlord about expanding. We're about to go through another wall into another space. Well, I had been in conversation with an organization to do training out of our space. And I knew that, and so a week later, after this happened at church, they said, okay, we're going to go ahead and start doing the training at your space. The money that they're paying me will cover the rent for the new space. But here's the thing, my landlord been moving slow. He hasn't opened the wall yet. We already started getting paid for them training, which was going to cover the rent for the new space, even though we haven't gotten a new space. Then the landlord recently gave me the key to the new space, even though he hasn't opened the wall. So now they're using the new space and our existing space, and I'm still getting paid for it, but I'm not paying any rent yet. This is not the first time that that's happened. I bought a rental property in Danville about 15 more than 15 years ago. And there was an issue where we couldn't close when we were supposed to close. And I had a extended family member gonna move into the property. So I negotiated with the seller, can you please have them move in and I'll pay you rent? Well, I was earning money, I was getting paid rent and paying them rent, but I actually made money in this because what they charged me and what I was charging them, there was a difference. So for a couple of months, I was making money on a property I did not own. And I remember saying to myself this morning, Trish, you got to go remember and look that up again in the scripture and see where that's at, because you're going to make money on something that's not yours. And I know you've seen this before, but this is God's pattern in my life. This is not the first time that he's done it. So God has pattern in all of our lives. He has ways that he blesses each of us. You got to look for the pattern that God has in your life, because that pattern is going to show up again. But you got to say yes. And it all starts with you saying yes. And even though you might feel inadequate, and even if your pockets might be inadequate, God's still going to show up and bless you. Where was I at? I know I'm on point 3. I got other stuff I ain't telling y'all, so I'm sitting here like, okay. All right. So, okay, here we are. Now, the next thing, point 3, you need to be patient because nothing happens automatically. It took 15 years between the time David was anointed and David became king. He walked around with that for 15 years. Also while, running around trying not to be killed. 15 years. I looked up last night because I wanted to see, well, how many years was it between the time that Joseph was thrown into slavery and then his brother showed up? A commentary that I read said estimated 22 years. So God gives us visions and he shows us things, and they don't happen quickly, nor do they happen automatically. And as humans, especially in our society today, because we live in a microwave society, we expect everything to happen right away. But that's not how God works. Years ago, when I first started my business and I got my first office, my first business office, people talk about me now because, I got this co-working space, and I got 3 offices. I have my office and 3 other offices that we rent, and then the expansion, we about to have 5 more offices, and I got 6 employees, including myself, on payroll. But way back when, I bought a desk and a chair, and I couldn't even afford to buy the drawers to go in the desk. I just had a shell. And I had stuff shoved underneath the desk. You couldn't see what was going on. I looked professional. I added the drawers later, and then another later time I added the return on the desk to have a little extra room. But I had a vision, and the vision wasn't what I'm in right now. I'm doing stuff that I hadn't planned doing, but God knew. So none of this is going to happen as quickly as you think it might happen or in the way that you expect it to happen, but it's going to happen. And God going to show up at times that you won't expect for him to show up. Like that time I walked into that space and said, yeah, I can see this, and then the next day got a phone call and said, oh, we can give you some more money. And by the way, not only did they give me money for the space, they also gave me money to build out the space, to furnish the space. So we got like $50,000 worth of furniture because they said, can you use more money? Oh, yes, I can. Now let me see what my vision is. But that was because God showed up. God kept showing up. It wasn't automatic. So you have to be able to say to yourself, okay, how can I continue to hold on to this vision even though it's not happening right now? Which is why the other thing I want to say is that you have to be motivated by service, because people who are motivated by money, when the money don't show up right away, they'll go and do something else. I see it all the time. I work with entrepreneurs. That's what my business is. People who chase money, they'll never make money because they keep turning. They're not doing anything long enough for traction to build up. But money follows service. So if you're serving, the money will follow. If you're trying to follow money, money is never going to last. Point 4, you can prepare. I'm putting air quotes around prepare because you really can't prepare for what God's going to do, but you can get your mind right. You can prepare by training yourself to be comfortable with being uncomfortable until being uncomfortable feels like it's normal. Many years ago, I used to hate speaking in public. When I was in corporate, I actually was in a speech contest, and the only reason I did it is because somebody told me there was a cash prize. And I was like, okay, well, I need to win that money. And I was so nervous up there that my legs were shaking, and I used to have to write every speech word for word in order to be able to do it because I was afraid to talk in public in front of people. So I had to change the way I did things. I had to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the truth is, that's what faith is. Faith is never comfortable. It is never a comfortable place. If it is, your faith ain't strong enough. And there have been times that I've said to my pastor, like, listen, I didn't know I wanted, I don't think I want this much faith. Do I have, like, God keeps stretching me and growing me. And I'm like, but do I need to grow that much, Lord? Right? It's uncomfortable. But I'm at a place now where uncomfortable is normal because I did some things in the physical realm to make myself be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So there was a season, it was the same year that everything changed. In 2020, I went on vacation by myself. Had never done that before. I don't like doing stuff by myself. I didn't used to anyway. But I went to Puerto Rico by myself, and I was like, well, while I'm here, I'm going to do stuff. So I went snorkeling, and I went zip lining, and I went horseback riding, and I did all these things on purpose. Why? Because I needed to put myself in situations that made me feel uncomfortable. So it started out years before that, which was, instead of sitting in the back, I'm going to sit in the front row. Because why? That made me uncomfortable. And I needed to stretch myself, and I needed to grow myself. So now, when things happen, and somebody says, well, Tricia, we should do X. Can you do this? Yep, sure can. How you going to do it? I don't know. I'm going to pray about it. God going to show me what to do. We're going to do this. Because I'm already comfortable with being uncomfortable. Me taking an improv class that I told y'all about, I kept reading books, and 3 different books brought up improv. And it basically made me comfortable with being in front of people, made me comfortable with being on stage, made me comfortable without having everything written out. I did it on purpose because I had to put myself in situations where I was comfortable with being uncomfortable. So when God says do something now, I just say, okay, Lord, because I got enough faith, and now I can sit in the discomfort of my faith so that and start to move so that God can show up. Because otherwise, when you are uncomfortable, you won't move. You'll just sit and wait, and you wait for something to happen, and you wait for God to do something, but that's not how it works. How it works is you start to move, and then God opens doors. You start to move, and then God opens windows. You start to move, and God says, okay, I see you. Now let me show you who I am. But if you don't move, God will wait for you. And if you don't move, he'll send his word to someone else to perform it. So you have to move and do the thing that God told you to do, even though it's uncomfortable, even though it might hurt. It doesn't really hurt. We just think it does. Because in our humanness, that's what we think. Again, that's why we need grace. The last point is focus. So actually, let me back up. I need to challenge you. I have to challenge you on every point. I didn't write this stuff down. I came up with this at the back of the room, so I got to remember to do that part. So if you want to say yes, remember we are responding to the urge. So the first point was, what is it that God is calling you to do? That's an urge because it's urgent. Second was saying yes. What can you do right now? What step can you take to show God that you're saying yes? Being patient. So my point on that is write the vision, because that's what the word says. Write the vision and make it plain. You don't have to execute all of the vision right now. If you get in a car to drive to Chicago, you're not going to be there at the moment you think it. You're gonna, back in the day, I'm going to age myself, back in the day, you used to have to take an atlas out and map the route. Right? Right? When you would take those trips with your family back in the day, you had that atlas out, you go to AAA and tell them, okay, this is where we're going, and they're going to tell you this is the way you can go. And if you were to encounter some construction or whatever, you pull that atlas out and go, okay, wait a minute, let me see how we can get around this and go there. Or if you get lost, let me see how I can get my way back home, right? So you got to map that out. So point 3, on the thing that you said yes to, what is the ultimate vision that God gave you, and what's the path to get you there? And then point 4, what can you do intentionally right now to get yourself trained to be uncomfortable? Because God gonna put you in uncomfortable situations. There is no way that Joseph or David was comfortable in any of those situations they were in. Can you imagine living in a house with somebody that you're trying to serve and they trying to kill you? I'm just trying to be nice and sing and play some music and whatever and you know, help you feel good, and here come a spear or a javelin thrown at your head? There is no way. I left the sheep. I could have been out there with the bears and the lions. This is better than this. You're going to be uncomfortable going to where God is taking you, and there's a reason why. Because your faith has to increase. Because God is taking you someplace that you don't even know, and the air is thin up there. And you got to learn how to breathe better. So in order to do that, he got to train you for that. All the struggles and everything that you go through, all the stuff he didn't show you, is for that. It's for you to be able to be prepared for that, because it's going to be even more stuff coming your way. There is a reason why David, when he went to see Goliath and he said, you know what? Yeah, I haven't done this armor thing before. This is my personal interpretation of the Bible. I just like to talk about it conversationally. I haven't done this armor thing before, but when I was out with the sheep, when a lion or a bear used to come, I would respond. And when the lion or the bear tried to turn on me, I'd kill it. Now, this uncircumcised Philistine gonna be like that lion and that bear. There's a reason why God prepared him for that, because he knew he was gonna be a man of war. If you can kill lions and bears, you can go out and defend God's name, right? You can do all of these things. God was preparing him for that. He was preparing him for war. His brothers, they wouldn't even fight. David was the one out there tending the sheep and getting strong. But then he also said, God delivered me. It wasn't, I did this. I killed the lion and the bear, but God delivered me from the paw of the lion and the bear. So he knows what he did physically, but he knows it was God that delivered him. So we have to have that same mindset of, yes, I did this and I did that, but it was God. And I know that in my discomfort in those situations, I'm prepared for whatever is to come. So I know that God is preparing me for some great things. So point 5 is to focus on becoming less like you and more like God. And ask yourself, this is a question that I asked myself. So I told you about how I went to that training. I had found a training, and a month later, I was there. I flew out to Colorado and was in class. But the morning of the training, I said, okay, I looked myself in the mirror, and I said, who do I need to become to do this? What changes do I need to make in my life to do this? Because I said at the beginning, you are a person. And everything we do as people shows up. How you show up in one thing is how you show up in everything. So if you have some inadequacies in your life, not only do I have faith that God gonna help me with them, but I'm gonna do some stuff in the natural to help me with them. So if one of those inadequacies is, especially in business, for example, I'm not good with paper or keeping track of things or disorganization, okay, well then you're gonna have to figure out some way to fix that, right? So you can go to God and be like, okay, God, help me with this. I did that one time. I Googled, I hate my to-do list, and I found a book called Getting Things Done. So every now and then I do a wind check, and I go, okay, Holy Ghost, what do I need right now? What do I need to prepare me for the next thing? And I'm constantly working on myself. And a lot of stuff that I read in business books, I can find you how it lines up with the word. And so I'm like, okay, I know what I need to do. But I first ask myself, who do I need to become? So the last point is to focus on becoming the best version of yourself so that you can continue to serve God in the way that he wants you to serve him, and you can fulfill that service. Because I know that I serve God in my business. I know that I am called to help people walk in the fullness of the calling that God put on their lives. To help people realize the dreams that God gave them. This is my service unto the Lord. This is what I'm called to do. I can't tell you why I'm called to be in politics. The Lord ain't showed that to me yet. I'm just still there saying yes. There's stuff that shows up, and I'm like, okay, God, I see all your hand in this. I see what's happening. I've seen what's happened in the last 2 years. I saw it 2 years ago. I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing, Lord. I see what you're doing. I don't know why, but I see what you're doing. He'll show me eventually. I'm just saying yes. But I'm focusing on becoming. In the meantime, I'm focusing on how I show up, how I show up in this political realm and the person that I need to be. So my last question for you is, ask yourself who you need to become in order to do the thing that God called you to do way back at point 1. We got 13 minutes left. I don't know if we actually really have 13 minutes, might be like 8. So I don't know if there are any questions. I know this was not supposed to be me like preaching, but I felt like when I was told that the topic was going to be leveling up in business and in politics, the first thing that came to my mind was, well, you just got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's my life. I'm uncomfortable every day, and if I get to a point where I'm not uncomfortable, then I'm not growing, because you can't go where God's taking you without growing, and you can't grow without being uncomfortable. That's why they call it growing pains, right? Any woman that has had a baby, and I have not, but any woman has had a baby has said being pregnant is not comfortable. That baby growing is not comfortable. There's discomfort with growth. There's discomfort in going where God told you to go. But there's also wonderful things. God don't show you everything, just like he don't show you the afflictions, he don't show you all the blessings. Because God didn't show me that I was going to open a co-working space. He didn't show me when I walked in that space that the next day I was going to get money, and I was just going to ask for exactly what I wanted. I just said yes. So is anybody on any of the points that I brought up, any of the questions or the challenges in terms of, especially the calling part, does anybody feel like that they're being called to do something that they've sat on way too long? And God is saying, now it's time to move. If so, come to the microphone because I want to hear it. Because one of the things that I do is I help people walk in their calling. Hello.
I speak an awful lot to people about stepping out of your fear, something that I have been doing over the last couple of years. However, about 4 years ago, I did a lot of writing, things that the Spirit put me writing. And my friend said, Debbie, you should take these and put them in a book, prayer book. I've been sitting on these things for 4 years. I finally looked at them over the last maybe 9 months and realized that I have written some really nice things. I want to get them published. And I am standing over here foolishly as I tell everybody else, move, and I'm not.
Mm,
So I'm listening to you now saying, I need to move.
okay.
So that's it.
Now, Debbie, you don't know this. I actually published a book. I have actually published multiple books. I used to have a publishing company. So I published my first book. It's on Amazon right now. It is not about any of this. Um, in a former life, I was a sports reporter. It's about football. But I could actually give you some information to help you walk through that process.
I should probably talk to you.
Yes, we should talk.
So I shall move forward.
Yes. Amen. I'm glad you thank you for being obedient and coming to the mic because this is a perfect example of everything I've been talking about. You walked up to the mic not knowing that I already had the information that you needed.
And probably not knowing that you're going to make sure that I talk to you.
Mm-hmm. Cause you know I know how to get in touch with you. Yes.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So for several years, I've been in education for Chicago Public Schools for like 19 years. And I said, I'm just getting tired of this. I need something, I want more. So I said that my passion is healthcare, helping to heal, helping to find out what is the real problem of why we're getting sick, not feeling better, always, we're always going to have to go to the doctor. So I said, I want to go into healthcare. So I applied for physician's assistant school and nursing school. Well, having a degree in education, I never went back and took the science classes. So I procrastinated for at least 15 years and said, well, I don't want to take this class. I don't feel like going back to school. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And then next thing I know, I went back and said, oh, well, a year went by. I could have took that biology class. Another year went by. I could have took that human anatomy class. And I said, finally, I'm going to just take one class at a time until I need as many classes as I need to get in my program. I did that 2 years straight, got an associate's degree in the science programs. That helped me more with applying to the schools. I got rejected 3 times. I said, I quit. This is not for me. I don't care. I'm just going to go back to education. But then I was miserable. Getting up every morning, going to a job you really don't want to go. Yeah, it paid the bills, but I didn't really want to do it. I said, I'm going to apply again. And I did. And I got in on that fourth time at University of Illinois Chicago graduate nursing program. So the procrastination can be a silent killer because it can stop you from achieving the goal of where you really want to be. It might not be the first time you get it, might not be the second, might not be the third, but it came in on the fourth. So every semester, that one class, you start in the summer, next thing you know, it's already Thanksgiving. It's already Christmas. That semester's over. You get ready, you're going to do the next one. And if you keep going, now that's your new routine.
Mm-hmm.
So now that helps me cutting some of this out. Now I need to start studying, going to church. As soon as I come home from church, I'm not going to go home and go to sleep and watch TV. I'm going to read this science book. I'm going to do this. I got to keep going until I level up and graduate summer of 27. So the success and the goal, it might take you a while to get there, but next thing you know, it's coming. It's already there. We got what? 6 more weeks of summer. We're gonna be parents going back to school.
Mm-hmm.
Then here comes Thanksgiving. Here comes Christmas. So you see, don't let fear and anxiety and procrastination stop you from leveling up.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to add to what you said because you just made me think of something. One of the things that God does is you'll start with incremental steps, but God will take you to exponential growth. So if you think of, well, 2 plus 2 and 2 times 2 are the same thing, but 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. 2 times 2 times 2 is not. And what will happen is, as you start to move in a direction and you keep taking faith steps, God will grow you exponentially instead of incrementally. I went from 1 employee to 2 employees to 6 employees. Now we're working on another grant that's probably going to give us another 4 more employees. Exponential growth happens when you start taking faith steps. Anybody else want to share what their calling is? I love hearing about. I'm for real. I get so excited hearing about people share what their dreams are and what God told them to do. And the thing, and the reason why business exists, and the reason why we go after some of the grants that we've gone after, because I had to figure out how to give it to people for free and still be able to eat. So, anybody else want to share?
My son's been trying to get. I have a business. It's called Trinity's Chosen Vessel. It's really a gospel group, but I have it registered as an LLC. And my son keeps talking to me about grants. And he says every time he comes to talk to me, I tell him, well, we need really a lot of time to just sit down and talk about it. So I think I'm running from that part.
And so, then what are you going to say yes to?
I'm going to say yes to talking about the grants.
Okay. All right. And then what's the, well, I guess that is the first step that you take, and is having that conversation.
That part, yeah.
Okay.
Because of course, being in ministry, it takes funds. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the part that I'm needing help in right now. But I said yes when he told me to go and sing. I've been singing since I was a little girl, so at that part I'm going to stick to. But it's the funding part that I'm more worried about. And then also, I've also always wanted to write a book. And I wanted to write a book about myself, but I may eventually.
That sounds like something you might want to say yes to, too. So, can I challenge you?
Yes.
Write your outline.
Okay.
That's your first step.
Okay.
Write your outline of what's going to be in your book.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all for having me. It was a blessing to be here and share with you all.
Praise the Lord. That was awesome. So write your book. I was listening at her when she was saying it. I was thinking, man, what can I do? I want to do something too. But praise the Lord, it's not the time now. Praise the Lord. We want to thank you again for Alderman for coming in and giving us a word. And so now we're going to prepare for our next speaker. At 11 o'clock, it looks like you got 2 minutes, so I would suggest that you just stay because I see he's ready to come up. So unless you need to leave, we're going to move right on in to our next speaker.